So I keep hearing YouTubers talk about quantitative easing, and that is a real thing, and we'll talk about exactly what it is, but I don't think they're using that term correctly, and I think it's misleading a lot of people. So I'm going to talk about quantitative easing. I'm going to show you some facts and data to show when it's going to happen, exactly when it will happen, why it will happen, and what we should really be looking at instead of quantitative easing. And look, you're really going to want to stay to the end because I have some information that might shock you or surprise you because it's not what you're being told everywhere else. If you're not a subscriber, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button now. That way you'll be sure to be alerted and things like that when I do have new videos come out. And hit the like button. At the very least, if you've made it this far in a couple seconds into the video, hit that like button so I know that you're here. So to talk about it, let's talk about quantitative easing first. Let's talk about what it is. Quantitative easing is not what people think it is. It is not the interest rates the Fed charges. Quantitative easing and quantitative tightening refers to the Fed's monetary policy of purchasing or selling long-term assets such as treasuries or mortgage-backed securities. So the Fed has a power to buy these things, and it started in 2008. But it's not what you think because it has nothing to do with the interest rates. The one main thing that it does have to do with the interest rates is that every time the Fed does quantitative tightening, the interest rates are not at zero. Every time they do quantitative easing, the interest rates have to be at zero. Think about this. It makes 0 sense to print money that you pay for with an interest rate if rates aren't at zero. So you're not going to have, it's like pushing the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. So look at this. This is history since 2008, and this is the federal funds rate. And the federal funds rate is when this is zero or near zero is when it's 0.25 or 0.5. We had quantitative easing, and they did that to provide liquidity back to the markets. But as soon as the interest rates were not zero, they did quantitative tightening. Their balance sheet, the Fed on their balance sheet, in 2008 had about $0.9 trillion. That's it. We have 10 times that much on our balance sheets at the height, and we've been selling off our assets. So the Fed had, if they had $10 trillion on their books back then, they would have no room to buy anything. So when the interest rates are not zero, they sell their assets so they have some room to buy things when things are truly bad. So here's the CPI. This CPI has gone up consistently since 2008, and it shot up during COVID. That's the inflation. Now let's look at inflation versus the balance sheet. You have inflation going up and the balance sheet shooting up, shooting down. So why am I telling you all this? What's the reasoning that I'm telling you all this? Is because all the YouTubers out there that are talking about getting quantitative easing going, I don't think they understand what that means because you're not going to have quantitative easing until the interest rates are at zero, not 4.5%. So this is exactly when quantitative easing is going to happen. This is exactly when, and we can look at history to prove this, is that quantitative easing will happen when interest rates go to zero. When is that going to happen? Well, let's take a look. This is the next meeting of the federal funds. So we have to be looking at, the answer is we have to be looking at the interest rate in which the Fed charges on their overnight rate or their federal funds rate. And it is at 4.25 to 4.5. There's a spread there, but we'll call it 4.25 to 4.5. And right now there's no chance of that changing in May or March. Pretty much no chance in May. Very slight chance in June, July. Maybe September will get a 0.25 point, but we'll still be at 4 to 4.25 points. No time during this year will it be at zero. And I don't even think it's going to be at zero next year. It might not ever be at zero again until a major catastrophic event happens where we need to pull it down to zero. A recession, a major war that's impacting our economy, something major. And right now, it doesn't look like that's in the cards. So this year, I can almost guarantee, unless something majorly catastrophic happens, rates will not go to zero. Now, if something catastrophic happens, we might see rates go to zero, in which case we'll have other issues. But that being said, so don't even think about quantitative easing this year. Stop talking about it because it's not going to help. Now, again, the monetary policy might help because let's look at a graph. I love graphs. Let's look at a graph of the Bitcoin price versus the federal funds rate, not quantitative easing. This is just them lowering their interest rate to lower the cost of funds and money and put more liquidity out there and have more risk on asset attempts. But look, Bitcoin and the federal funds rate were just moving along down there at zero, And then when the rate started to go up, we saw an increase in the Bitcoin price. And then it peaked here in 2018 around 2.5%. And it actually drove the price down. And then we saw when the rates went to zero, we saw Bitcoin price rise up. And when rates started to increase, Bitcoin prices retreated. And you can call that the cycle, but it's right along the same line. So when the federal funds rate came up, it just happened to be a 4-year cycle in the federal funds rate, and it drove the price of Bitcoin down when they rose the rate up. And so right now you can see we're coming in a convergence. And as this goes down, this will probably go up just like it did in history. So what are we looking for? I would stop looking for quantitative easing. It's not going to happen this year. We all want to be looking at the federal funds rate and the cost of money because it drives people to more risk on assets and more riskier investments because their money in cash is losing value. So investors want to find a better place for their money. So they're going to move to more risky assets in order to find that yield so their money isn't worth less and less. It makes sense. So what are we looking for? We're looking for the federal funds rate to decrease. It doesn't look like that's going to greatly happen. So we have to look at the supply and demand. There's going to be other things that might drive Bitcoin, maybe real world utility, but we have to stop looking at quantitative easing as the answer because it's just not going to happen. That's all I got. I hope you understand my point of this is to give real information out, not misinformation. I don't want you all thinking that this world is waiting for something to happen that is just simply not going to happen this year unless something catastrophic happens, then all bets are off. That's all I got. Hope you got some value out of this. If you did, hit the like button, share, comment, do all those things, and I'll see you next time.